Hi Kaylin, how are you doing?
I'm okay, how are you?
Pretty well. So I thought I'd start off by asking a check-in question. High point of the week and low point of the week.
High point of the week was when I was able to discharge a client that I've had for 2 years. It was amazing to see her progress for the past 2 years. She's overcome a lot of boundaries with schizophrenia and borderline tendencies as well. And so she's made some amazing strides to help kind of change her life, and she's able to kind of function more on a stable kind of level now in society. So she has a job, she has her own house, she goes to routine groups therapy sessions, so it's great. For the down, the client I was talking about last week, she does not want to continue with us.
Okay. And so going back to the high point, I just want to check in with you about how you're feeling about discharging somebody that you've been following for 2 years.
I mean, I'm pretty happy with it, because it was awesome to see her kind of, progress from such a down point to such a high point, and I've never been able to kind of witness that before, so it was great. Kind of felt accomplished.
Okay. And going back to the low points, so you're talking about the client Christina
Yes.
that you did the intake with, and you brought that up in supervision last week, and I sort of want to address how I responded to you bringing that up. So you brought it up, and then I said to you, why don't you write her a letter, offer her services in the future, and that kind of thing. And I sort of rushed to that, and I think I asked you to show me the letter before you sent it. And I sort of rushed through that, and I didn't really ask for your input about what you planned on doing or what you felt comfortable doing. So I want to kind of go back and revisit that, and see if I'm on the right track with that, if you had any feelings about my response last week.
I guess I felt like my feelings weren't really incorporated into the decision. I wasn't really, I felt kind of incompetent, like you weren't considering my skill level, and I kind of wanted to take this client on further, because it was a really interesting client, and so I felt like we just kind of jumped the gun on terminating.
Okay. So you said that you did the intake with her, and then you called her to make another appointment, and she just said that she doesn't want to go through it anymore. And that happens kind of a lot, where clients will do the intake, and then there's no word from them again, or they just don't want to do it for whatever reason. And but I can imagine that you may have felt pretty disappointed because you sounded pretty motivated to work with her.
Yeah, I guess I felt disappointed and kind of a little embarrassed.
Okay. Can you elaborate on what you mean by embarrassed?
Just because I felt like the intake wasn't as good as it could have been, and I just felt like it may have reflected on my skills, and then I think that might have made me feel a little inadequate during our last session.
Okay. So you felt embarrassed with the client, or you felt embarrassed in supervision last week?
In both.
Both. Okay. So did you feel like, I want to go back to your confidence level and see, has that been affected at all?
Yes, I think a little bit it has been. I mean, because before I was kind of thought I was a pretty decent therapist, and then after the session, and the client just kind of didn't decide not to come. Never experienced that before, so I felt like I was doing something wrong.
Okay. And do you feel like that's still affecting your work today? That sort of change in confidence?
Yes, I think so. I guess I just feel a little on edge now with clients, just not able to kind of be comfortable.
Okay. If it's okay with you, I'd like to go back to Christina and go through the intake process. And it's not to point out what you did wrong or what's wrong with the intake or what you could have done. We're going to address what you could have done differently, but in a way that I hope is more constructive than anything, because it sounds like a lot of factors that may have contributed to her not coming back for another session.
Okay.
And it may or may not change the course of the relationship that you have with Christina, but it may change the way that you kind of view the whole situation.
Okay.
So if you could just take me back to the beginning of the intake.
So she showed up 15 minutes late, so we were kind of on a time restraint. It felt pretty impersonal because we were going so fast and just, you know, it's a psychosocial assessment, so it's like very factual, not kind of deep conversations. And I could tell she wanted to talk about those conversations, but because of our limited time and a client right after, I couldn't really go into detail about those. We weren't able to I wasn't able to process through the session of what she really needed. We also weren't able to kind of formulate goals. It was just kind of like a factual boom, 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 see you later.
Okay. And I know from observing some of your other intakes that you summarize at the end of the intake and you sort of go through what you did and remind the client, you know, this is what it is and this is, you know, what we went over. Were you able to do that with Christina?
I mean, a little, but not very much.
Okay. And after the intake was over, were you able to sort of, like, did you, kind of think, like, oh, I didn't really...
Yeah, afterwards, when I was trying to process it, I kind of realized, like, oh, this wasn't really great.
Okay. So it sounds like there was it was kind of difficult to identify some of the problems, identify what she wanted to get out of it, and because of the limited amount of time. And it sounds like you did complete the psychosocial, though, which is pretty amazing to do that in such a short session.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is a plus. I mean, 40 minutes for a psychosocial assessment is pretty great.
Yeah.
And to get all the details, yeah.
And then to walk right from that into another session without having time to really reflect and process about it. So do you feel any differently now about your confidence level, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was pretty, I mean, it wasn't a total fail because I was able to finish the psychosocial assessment. So I was able to get some pretty important information, even though there wasn't like that personal kind of touch or deep conversation. And I guess with most psychosocial assessments, you can't really, and intakes, you can't really get to that personal level that you want to because you have to do that. And I guess I should have explained that to the client to begin with, that the first session is kind of more factual. So I guess it's not really all my fault because I wasn't really, I mean, the expectation of psychosocial assessments not to make that kind of relationship, like deep conversation.
Well, you did do some rapport building on the phone before you even met her, you know, before you even scheduled the intake. You know, you, I think, built a pretty solid rapport with her, from what I gathered from what you've told me.
Yeah.
And she did come in and completed the intake, and that's a step, you know, forward with you. So the other thing that I was kind of thinking is, it sounds like you know, really want to be really good in all of the domains and all of the things that are going on. And when something is sort of different from what you expected, that can be kind of a challenge, and it can sort of possibly set you back in your confidence. Do you think that's...
Yeah, I guess my mindset is very perfectionist, and I don't like to be anything below that, I guess.
So it could have, like, been a personal thing that maybe she didn't come back because of you. Is that kind of...
Yeah, I guess it's, I mean, I can see it as not like a personal attack as much as, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And are you able to sort of depersonalize that, the fact that she didn't come back in?
Yeah, I mean, it could have just been her own stuff coming about, and not my, not because of my skill set or anything.
Okay. So I kind of want to just check in with you and see where you're at. So how do you feel about moving forward?
I feel better than I did when I was coming in.
Good. Yeah. That's a plus.
Yes.
And do you feel, any sense of, do you feel out of control or chaotic, or that you're not getting anything out of the supervision, or how?
I think today was very constructive and informative, and it kind of changed my mindset from being very negative self-talk to kind of more of a practical way of looking at it.
Okay. And I hope that the emotional underpinnings were also addressed.
Yes, I think you addressed my emotions and my thoughts and feelings pretty well, and you addressed how the last session kind of impaired my way of thinking for the session, and I think that was great.
Okay. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next week.